In this week's podcast, I wanted to share the process of Neptune to blend and to unify. Now, Neptune's effects are all so subtle, but I want to give you a little bit of understanding so that you can feel into this most beautiful energy in your life and your work. Welcome to Star-Powered Astrology for Changemakers. I'm Leslie Tagorda, your guide, a Hawaii-born Filipino-Jewish astrologer who loves navigating visionaries like you through the spiritual journey of your work so that you can be inspired to lead by your chart and become the luminary leader you were born to be. Hello, my friends. I'm recording this on September 14th, and in just about a week, Neptune, that is retrograde currently in its home sign of Pisces, will be facing off with the sun in an opposition, signaling to us that it is that midway point of Neptune's retrograde phase. Remember, when it's an opposition, it's like a full moon phase between the sun and Neptune, and illuminating all of our ways that we can integrate our source creativity, that's our sun's superpowers, with the beautiful, expansive imagination, blending, elusive Neptunian planetary medicine. Now, Neptune is one of those energies that if you try to logicize it or understand it or grasp at it, like the meaning just like slips between your fingers. There's like no way to grasp it. It's like trying to like grasp the ocean when you go to the beach and you're like, I want to grab all of the ocean. There's absolutely no way. Even if you try to put in your hands, all of the water slides through your fingers. But of course, Neptune, as the ruler of Piscean ocean, it is our ability to feel interconnected, that depth, that vastness with everything, with everyone, in all times, in all places, in all spaces, in all dimensions, as a singular droplet of water that blends into the greater ocean in a beautiful watercolor brushstroke. Now, in your life and your business, whatever Neptune touches, it tends to create both confusion as well as inspired imagination. But that's the gift that raises us out of the ordinary mundane. Neptune is definitely one of those spiritual energies, more than like the morality and the dogma of religion, but really that chi, that source that connects us all. In this episode, I'm recording this the last of the Outer Planet Process series. So I've already recorded or shared with you Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto and Uranus. And this is absolutely a wonderful time to explore the process of Neptune in your life and in your work. And so, as we go through the rest of this episode, I want to remind you that this is an excerpt from my larger intensive called Celestial Cycles, where we look at the different processes of each of these planets. Now, generally, when I've been talking about the other planets, Jupiter and Pluto and Saturn and Uranus, not in order, um, those planets I've talked both about the process of those energies and what it's like going through transits. But in this one, because Neptunian transits are super, super, super subtle, I didn't actually cover that in my course about what happens when you have a Neptunian transit. Well, if you have a Neptunian transit on one of your angles, well, that process of that angle gets a little bit confusing. I think in the course, I told a story and I'm going to say it again. So if I repeat myself, my apologies. But when I was having a Neptune transit across my descendant and in my seventh house, when I was in my early 30s, oh boy, was I making all kinds of mistakes in relationships and creating these kinds of like phantom relationships with people who didn't even think that they had a relationship with me. How embarrassing. But on the other end of it, it helped me really understand what I wanted and desired in a spiritual connection, in a relationship, and just the possibility, even though I was quite confused about relationships during that time. So I hope that you enjoy this excerpt from my premium content in Celestial Cycles that lives in my astrology library in Star Powered Circle. Star Powered Circle, as we approach 2024, already planning for 2024, is basically my community, a year-long community that you can pop in. We have trainings, we have new moon ceremonies, we have retrograde master classes, and so much more. So if you're interested in, you got inspired by the celestial cycles here and you want to dive in deeper, like head on over to starpower.com/circle and get on that wait list so that you are notified when we open the doors right after American Thanksgiving at the end of November. So please enjoy everything that you want to know about Neptune's process in your life and your work. As we go further out into the solar system, next we have Neptune, whose primary role is to transcend. So Neptune, another outer planet, also sometimes called a generational planet like Uranus and Pluto. We call them generational planets because they spend so much time in a sign that your entire generation will share a similar Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto sign because they spend so much time there. And so Neptune is a co-ruler of Pisces, the modern ruler of Pisces, and takes 165 years to orbit the sun, spending about 13 and a half years in each sign. Now, Neptune was discovered in 1846. And the mythology of Neptune are around the deities of the gods and goddesses of the ocean. I love to think of Yamaya as a quasi Neptunian force. Now, the process of Neptune is to blend, to envelop, to interconnect, to empathize, and to transcend. So in Western society, right around in the 1840s, in the Victorian era, there was this rise of something called spiritualism. Spiritualism was definitely an opening to this idea of the metaphysical. Like, what? We can't make this up, right? So when Neptune was first discovered in September of 1846, astronomers named this beautiful deep blue planet after the god of the ocean. And of course, then it opened up the gates to bringing into human consciousness this idea of a deeper meaning of spirituality. Now, and the metaphysics of spirituality, where people, whether or not you believe this, were conversing with ghosts and other entities through different kinds of mediumship. And so wherever we have Neptune in our chart, and we see a lot of people that have a Neptune conjunct moon, and oh my gosh, are they mediums of some sort? Most certainly. And so this idea to transcend is this idea of the mysticism of spirituality, of religion, where almost all religions have some kind of mystical aspect where you're communing with something higher than themselves. And so to transcend is literally to rise above. Right? We think of now the greatest people that have this ability to transcend in our modern world as being maybe storytellers or movie directors or people that are literally creating entire fantasy worlds from something else, that when you are watching or when you're consuming or when you're participating in these different worlds, you are pulled out of reality and transcended into a new reality. So all kinds of creators, from filmmakers to musicians to artists, and even the greatest coaches that pull us out of our own reality and plop us into a new reality that we can then start to believe in, is Neptunian's process. I love to think of Neptune as this ability to blend, kind of like a watercolor. If you've ever painted with a watercolor, you know that it's not a precise type of painting, but that painting that if you allow it to bleed and if you allow it to go in its own way without controlling it, starts to take a life of its own. To truly work with the process of Neptune in our inner awakening is to bring acceptance and healing to our ability to dissolve, our ability to commune with our own divinity. There are so many paths to divinity, and if somebody tells you that there's only one way to access divinity, you know that they are not right, because we are all interconnected and there's so many paths. Neptune teaches us unity, compassion, and the shadows of Neptune can really, like we can sometimes avoid reality, whether this is through addictions or mental illness, some disillusionment. But Neptune wants us to surrender. Neptune wants us to feel into all times and all places. For those that have really strong Neptune, I often get a sense that when they enter a room, they can experience everything, everywhere, all at once. That totally all like the meta universal things that are going on right now in art and culture and film are so Neptunian to me. Neptune also shows us faith, shows us clarity from confusion, and Neptune can represent altered states of consciousness, whether this be through breath work and holotropics or through medicine work or other different ways of getting to altered states of consciousness. Now, of course, that is a really sticky slope to be in these places of altered states of consciousness, because Neptune can really bring us from this place of avoidance. And so we have to make sure, are we coming from this place of altered states of consciousness for avoidance, or are we coming it to connect with divinity? Now, in our life and our leadership and our work, that outer expression of Neptune at its highest potential, of course, is to transcend, to feel interconnected, to be connected to your own sense of spirituality and soul, to do dream work and and really to bring that compassion and focus it in on the self. It is also ability to suspend reality, because every once in a while we do need to suspend reality to really bring in other ideas, to create an illusion, to bring deep acceptance, to feel highly sensitive, to create ideas of fantasy, idealism, and to go beyond consciousness. You can see that this idea of Neptune, that the harder that you try to grasp and the harder you try to make tangible these ideas, the easier it slips out of your fingers. And so it's definitely really ephemeral, and just realizing where on the spectrum of reality and avoidance that we travel is really important when we're working with Neptune. Well, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Neptune. And if you're interested in diving in deeper into celestial cycles, head on over to starpower.com/circle and get on that wait list so that you can join in. All right, more soon. As a human design projector, my energy shines more brightly because of people like you who share my work. If you enjoy this podcast and want to help build a movement of innovative astrology and leadership and spark the intuitive revolution, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, or better yet, share this podcast with your change-making besties. We will all shine brighter together as we create the future we want to see.